Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to the Drafting the Circus program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we discuss everything racing, and what a big weekend of racing we had this past week. Joining me in the studio, Luis Torres, Richard Youden. Fellas, how we doing?
Good, thank you. We're good.
Actually been pretty stable when it comes to waking up, so it's been pretty good.
That's stable when it comes to waking up, yeah. Because any day you get out of the bed is a good day, right? So speaking of getting out of bed, you spent your weekend in Portland where the Indycar series began their West Coast swing, the first of 3 races to decide the championship. And Alex Palou was the big winner, started from the front, went to the back, and came back to the front. It's a good move, right? It's a play out of his teammate Scott Dixon's book from Mid-Ohio a couple years ago. But great points day for Palou, who was after the last couple of weeks, he'd been saddled with these engine penalties and other issues. So it puts him solidly back on top of the point standing with just 2 races remaining. So, Louise, your report from the ground at Portland, please.
Yeah, for sure. Alex Palou started on pole for the race in the PNC Bank. No, we're not talking about Scott Dix. We're talking about Alex Palou because both drivers decided to drive the same exact livery, just different side sponsorships. Palou is the pure PNC Bank, and Dixon had a different side of the PNC Bank logo. So it's very easy to tell who it is in what car, but at the end, it was a wild start. As usual, lap 1, turn 1, we saw chaos. And unlike the other 2 where we saw a car flip one year and then a couple of cars destroyed and never came back, there was only a few cars that had problems, which were Elio Castroneves, who it looked like at one point was going to be dead last, but it ultimately became James Hinchcliffe. Roman Grosjean got into it, and that's all because the front guys, Dixon, Palou, even Alexander Rossi, along with Felix Rosenqvist, missed the corner. They went, or even went wide, that a lot of cars went by, and then further back to just haggle, which was tough for Elio and Hinch, because Elio's trying to build that Meyer-Stein car into a contender for next year, especially on the road to street course programs. And on top of that, Hinchcliffe just cannot find any luck aside from Nashville. So he was basically the only guy out of this whole deal, out of race, but it was super minor to the point that it wasn't like what we saw. Then we had a long caution of trying to figure out how the lineup is going to be. At one point, it looked like Rosenqvist was going to be in second or third, but he completely missed the corner, so that would have been, he should have been in the back. Even one photographer.
The rule is really interesting there, and it confused a lot of folks, including I think the IndyCar officials who were trying to resort the field. But they said priority goes to guys that actually made the corner, followed by guys that sort of made the corner, followed by guys that just straight up took the escape route.
Yeah, but they were more proactive than the ARCA West race that took about 15 minutes to decide whether or not the guy who crossed the line finished first won or not because of the corner cutting.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered, every time I watch Portland, we seem to have this first lap melee, right? And it's just the way that track is set up. You've got a really good run. You're coming off the line, and then you've got that tight, festival curve there. It always just blows me. Why don't they just skip that on lap 1 and start using that turn on lap 2 when the field is not quite so bunched up? And I'm not the only one to suggest this, or at least have the start on the backstretch. I don't know. It just seems like
kind of like have a Mid Ohio start at the back end and then get them up to speed so they don't have to bunch up everywhere. But also, we've seen the past couple of races recently as well that it doesn't. With the first corner, it's been a problem as well for Mid Ohio. So I think it's kind of one of those things where you have to figure out what works best for everyone. But and that's that unique challenge. But IndyCar's not the only ones that have issues. Every discipline says they had problems. I don't recall. I haven't looked back much enough to see if there were even problems back in the day. It's just kind of become a thing since they fully returned in 2018. But going back to after the whole mess of a lineup order, we saw Pato O'Ward and Graham Rahal and Ed Jones be towards the front. Scott McLaughlin probably had one of his better races of late. This past Sunday, all of them had good showings, but it looked like Pato was probably going to be the benefactor and maybe run away with this championship to where Laguna, another good run, you will lock it up. That wasn't the case because we had a couple of yellows fall at certain points of the race that kind of hurt a lot of drivers. We also have some different strategies that kind of helped Palou. And I think Palou set it up right in the post-race conference that long caution for that turn one incident helped them more than it detrimented them, because that gave him a different strategy that put him up front. Same with Dixon and Rossi. Whereas Ray Hall back.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all those guys pitted. They went ahead and pitted on lap 9 when they were still sorting the field, since they were starting at the back anyway. Go ahead, top off the fuel and get a new set of tires, which gave them the ability to kind of not have to save fuel and be able to run a full song. With the additional 9 laps at the start of the race. See, it worked out for those guys.
Yeah, it worked with these. As you saw, the first 3 guys that started the race ended up being the first 3 finished. 1, 2, 3 start, 1, 2, 3 finish in the same exact order. I still don't know when was the last time we've seen that at an IndyCar race where the top 3 started and finished exactly where they were. Been a good while.
Particularly since they were nowhere near the starting positions through the midpoint of the race. So, but I want to say, speaking of the race, you got to take your hat off to Graham Rahal. Here's a guy that desperately needs a win. I think it's been 2017 since he's won a race.
Been a good minute.
And he got caught out by one of the later yellows, which kind of wrecked his strategy. And a little of that falls on the team because a lot of folks there close to him on a strategy had pitted earlier, and then the yellow came out before, so he got kind of hung out to dry there. But Rahal, for his part, he was laying down some really good laps and barely putting a wheel wrong.
Yeah, he had his best race all year, right?
Yeah, he looked really good. It's unfortunate he doesn't have the result to show for it.
Yeah, it is unfortunate on his end, but compared to sometimes when how luck can be real ugly for Rahal, at least he got a good outing out of it for sure. The same goes for Rossi, who got his first podium all season long. He pretty much had a perfect weekend, and for him, as far as getting the program back where they need to be, because that team has not had luck and struggled, and now the mindset is he's got a good set of races coming up with Laguna Seca and Long Beach, tracks that he's been good at. One in particular in a couple weeks time that still optimistic they'll go. We'll see by tomorrow once I finalize all that stuff out. Don't count Rossi out. I think Rossi's just there to go get some wins and stop this title. The ones who are still in the title chase from winning, making it difficult for them. But it's an overall good run for Rossi. But for Palou, this is a statement win because of those cautions. He actually regains the championship lead back from Pato O'Ward, who, speaking of Pato, he finished 8th after being a front runner earlier on. Now the gap is 23, 25 points to where now it's these 2 guys along with Dixon, Newgarden, and Ericsson left for the championship.
Yeah, I think actually Newgarden leaped ahead of Dixon. I think Dixon's down to 4th in the standings.
Yeah. Dixon is
Ericsson
a long shot.
Still alive by a thread. I mean, literally speaking, I think there's about 10 guys mathematically alive, but mathematically and real world are two different things. So realistically, you got to look at those top 4 guys.
Yeah, right now Ericsson is the complete launcher. He's the bottom. He's the last guy in this title fight out of the 5. That'll probably be reduced to 2 by next Sunday, depending how it goes. But I said Polo didn't put a wheel wrong. Aside from the opening lap, and from that point on, he just honed his craft and had it at a track that he's never raced, and it did help the Ganassi tested compared to Andretti Autosport that didn't test, which I think Rossi saw it as a disadvantage. But the fact that he and Colton Herta made it to the Fast 6 that he noted speaks wonders that, okay, Andretti are slowly getting it together, but I know it's too little too late for the championship, but it's a good building ground for 2022. And especially whoever's going to take over Hunter Ray's seat next season, which I think from all intents and purposes, it more than likely might be Grosjean.
Yeah, that's the pretty much that's the conventional wisdom that Grosjean has taken over that 28th seat. And Andretti, for their part, put out a couple of nice tributes to Hunter Ray on social media. I mean, that guy's been part of that team for a decade. He just started out as a part-time deal, and I know he was struggling at the time. He was in a legal battle with Paul Gentilossi.
Yeah, and also
over not getting paid and just looking for a place to race. And Andretti hired him for a couple of races here and there, liked him enough that he kept him on, and he's been there ever since. He's won a championship, won an Indy 500, won a number of races. That number 28, yellow and red DHL car has been synonymous with Ryan Hunter-Reay for a decade.
Yeah, and we talked about it months ago or over a year ago, IndyCar iconic liveries in modern day. DHL is right up there. I know some people say PNC Bank may be close enough to the modern day, but there's no question the DHL 28 is the synonymous paint scheme of the past decade. And Hunter-Reay, should he find a ride in 2022, if I recall, this will be his 20th season in IndyCar. He's been doing it for a real long time, too. People tend to forget that he started off in, I think it was 03 in Champ Car with the American Spirit team, won a race with them.
Yes, he sure did. Yep, I remember it well. He was very, very young, won a race.
Yeah, the first half of his IndyCar career is kind of journeyman-esque. He was a Champ Car, and he went to take over Jeff Simmons' the Paul Dana, then Jeff Simmons 17 ethanol car for a bit. And then kind of like you mentioned, after a while, it seems like his career was in question. But then when he joined Andretti, it seems like things clicked. And in the beginning, he was right out of the gate. But in the last couple of years, has been a real up and down. But people forget he was a title contender in 2018, a long shot at that. But he was still in the mix to the final race of the year not that long ago. But of course, all things do come to an end, and we'll be curious to see where DHL ends up, if they want to stick around, and so on and so forth. That's the thing that's sort of been unsaid, is what is DHL's position, right? I've heard from some sources that DHL is out, which is part of the reason why Ryan Hunter-Reay is out, and I've heard from other sources that DHL is in, because their parent company is actually an international company, and they're kind of pretty pleased to be aligned with Grosjean. But all this also
is,
they're involved in Formula One with one of those programs they do.
Exactly, but all this is idle speculation because there's been no solid news coming out of DHL or Andretti on the future of that sponsorship deal. But it'd be interesting to see. I hate to see them leave the sport because, like you said, it's one of those iconic liveries that has been there for. It was like when the Target cars disappeared. It was a sad day, Yeah,
for sure. But I still remember that it certainly was like you had so many drivers you can associate with Target: Zanardi, Montoya, Vassar, Dixon, Franchitti, Weldon. So many guys. And, of course, you have your obscure ones like Nicholas Manisanin, Darren Manning,
Eddie Cheever, Ari Leyendyke, Michael Andretti.
Yep. No, not Paul Tracy. I was thinking Budweiser, Newman Haas. One cup of coffee. But, yeah, you have so many drivers, but we'll see how that goes. there's still time will tell when Myeroshenko will announce their second driver. My best guess, maybe Long Beach, because that's AutoNation, Acura, Honda all coincide one another. Then maybe that would be the time, but probably not. We'll see when that'll come up.
And of course, all the smart money is on Simon Pagenaud taking that seat as Penske Racing scales back to a 3-car effort. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, there's so much news going on, but it seems like for the we still don't know about Rahal Letterman or even Ed Carpenter's lineup yet. I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason, but it's not as out of the world crazy compared to the other motorsport discipline out there. And I'm not talking about Formula One, because Formula One is almost essentially set, except there's like one true ride left up for grabs, and that being Alfa Romeo. But before we go talk about Formula One, we got Laguna Seca next. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make the trip because that's just how life works. But I would not be surprised if Andretti shows up in strong form, and I still feel like that championship will go down to the finale. Even no matter how, that's how IndyCar is. It'll be, I can see Palou having a great run, but I think Pato will do everything to counter rival to keep this championship going into next Sunday.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think this championship is going to go down to the last race. I don't think, as closely matched as these guys are, that one guy is going to have a banner day and 3 guys finish at the back of the field. You know what I mean? That's the only way it's going to get locked up this weekend, and I don't see that happening. But to your point, I do see perhaps Andretti having a strong day. I mean, Herta and Rossi both look good at Portland. Rossi,
they look good at Laguna.
Like you said, they look good at Laguna last year. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. So I do want to talk about the newest IndyCar driver, and I want to throw this over to Richard now that you've rejoined us. So it's your countryman, Callum Ilott. Had his IndyCar debut in the Yukos car, or Yukos Hollinger car. His first time there, the team was able to test a little bit with Kyle Kaiser, but these are realistically Ilott's first laps in an IndyCar, and he, the expectations are pretty low for a team that's not been on the grid since 2018. But I feel like he had a pretty good run and learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's sort of smart enough. He's been part of the Ferrari Driver Academy for a while now, so he's got some good pedigree there. He's got a good background. He'll do the right things in the right order, and you go in there, as you say, with very limited expectations, and it's purely, I think these 3 races in Portland, Laguna, and Long Beach are just purely basically test laps for them. Stay out of trouble, bring the car home, learn the art of IndyCar driving compared to Formula 2. Learn how the cars work, learn how the team work, it's just a learning exercise, and just absorb as much as you can. And I don't think for one moment that they'll be wrong. I think they're going about it the right way, and I think they'll achieve their targets. And it's pretty exciting to see him out there. I think it's going to be a good experience for him, and he did everything that was being asked of him, I think.
Yeah, and again, here's a guy who's a victim of the fact that there's more Formula One drivers in development than there are seats on the top rung.
Yep.
Which he was, after having a great Formula 2 season 2 years ago, he found himself locked out of a Formula 1 ride when Schumacher picked up a ride, as did Mazepin. And Ilott's on the outside looking in. So I'm glad that he's found somebody interested in him, that being Ricardo Yukos, who is now Yukos, for their part, he's a very astute businessman, very good racer. His Indy Lights teams have dominated for the better part of the last decade. His first foray into IndyCar, troubled with money, but now with the new partner in Hollander, they've got their money problems sorted out, and they're ready to make a go at a full season next year, and hopefully Callum Islet was just slated just to run Portland initially, but they've gone ahead and signed him to run all 3 of these races, which are 3 races that are right in his wheelhouse.
Yeah,
Kind of places he's used to racing at. A couple of.
I think that's the important thing for him as well. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not throwing him on a gateway.
Not going to Texas or something.
Not going to Texas. Yeah, but a couple of natural training road courses, and then a tight street circuit, which Formula.
He's done
2 runs on
Azerbaijan, Monaco.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, I think that a driver of his caliber coming out of that academy is only going to benefit the team. Much in the same way that we spoke about Grosjean really lifting the level of the Coyne team. And Christian Lundgaard coming into Rahal, which is a pretty darn good team to begin with, and just kind of excelling right off the bat. So I think it's a bit of a match made in heaven. And I hope they can keep out there, because I'd love to see Callum Islet keep racing.
Yeah,
not be relegated to sports cars where no one's going to see him.
Exactly. The guy is obviously talented to push. Mick Schumacher the way they did in the Formula 2 championship last year, and to achieve some of the things he's achieved. I mean, part of that Ferrari driver academy is certainly, no mean feat. He's done incredibly well to get to where he is. And as you say, he deserves to keep on racing. He deserves to be somebody that we have, can enjoy and watch racing at the highest level against some of the best drivers in the world and really prove himself. And, after what I think Grosjean's really sort of set a bit of a mark here, in that, and this is no disrespect to guys who've come before him, in the same breath as Takuma Sato and Rubens Barrichello to a certain extent, to them at times you often felt like IndyCar was like a last option. But with Grosjean, in a way, he could have walked away especially after the accident he had in Bahrain, but he wanted to keep going. He wanted to be involved in IndyCar because he wanted to race, and it was for the passion of it. And you look at, Alex Albon even said that if he hadn't got the Williams drive, he was seriously looking at IndyCar. And they see this as a serious career path rather than an extended way to fill out their 401k. These are guys that are actually coming out here to compete and be competitive and to race and, really sort of put themselves out there. So I think IndyCar is becoming a really viable alternative now. And it's never going to be Formula One. You're never going to have a Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton come over to IndyCar. It's just not going to happen. But it is an option for these guys who aren't making it, not through lack of skill, but lack of opportunity, right place, right time sort of scenario, which... Oh,
exactly. There's only 20 rides in Formula One, right?
And there's far more drivers capable of it.
And only 4 of those are highly desirable, right? Another 4 are sort of desirable, and then the rest is, field filler. You might get lucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So IndyCar, you can get to like a Coyne team, like Grosjean did, and which is lower budget compared to the Penske's and Ganassi's of the world, but he's up there contending.
Exactly. And
that's what drivers want to contend for the win.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, without a doubt. You look at some of the guys in Formula, Hulkenberg, for example, very long career, never got on the podium, and you got to wonder, everybody wants to be in Formula One, don't get me wrong, but you look at the, would another year for Hulkenberg at Alfa Romeo, for example, or 2 years at Alfa or 3 years at Alfa, just sat around basically running in the, hey, a good weekend scoring points. This guy's done his due. He's proved himself. I personally would have loved to have seen Hulkenberg in IndyCar, but I just don't think that's going to happen, because I think he would have been I think his attitude and his personality would be great for the sport.
Well, he did run that one race. He ran the race. Oh. Yeah, he filled in for
Paris. We're talking about Hulkenberg, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in IndyCar.
Yeah, didn't he fill in for Felix Rosenqvist in one race?
No, that's Magnussen, Kevin Magnussen, not Rosenqvist. I mean, Hulkenberg. Yeah, that was Magnussen.
Yeah, it was Magnussen.
But yeah, you look at all of those guys, and you think, they would be great. But again, IndyCar's also got to be seen to be a proving ground for local talent. It can't just go and pick up guys that are, ex Formula One drivers, because then it becomes like, Master GP Master Series from the early 2000s.
Or some obscure drivers. Like, I think we're gone. The thing is, we're done with the days of Rodolfo Levant, the Rodolfo guy, or you got some obscure, or just random one-offs like Alfonso Solis and all of that. Where I think we're gonna see an interesting influx of F2 guys, or some of them that are reserve drivers in F1. Try to give it a go and see where they stand out.
My only concern with that is you wonder where that would leave Indy Lights, because they've obviously struggling as it is, for feet. I mean, some of them, I remember watching some of those Indy Lights races, and there's less than 10 cars in the series.
But they have probably one of the strongest development series out there as far as the racing ladder is concerned, because those that have made it to from Indy Lights to move up to IndyCar all but one have been able to make it up there. I think there's one that many years ago that just never got that opportunity.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you get all these guys coming out of Formula 2 and into who don't get the Formula 1 rides, who end up migrating over to IndyCar, then where does that leave Indy Lights as a feeder series? I think it certainly does put it on the back burner a little bit. Now, obviously, there is a desire naturally, especially for some of the sponsors in the IndyCar series, to bring in US based drivers like Colton Herters and the Joseph Newgardens of the world, and guys like that. But you do.
Colton Herta and Joseph Newgarden are two guys that also raced in Europe for a while.
Well, that's very true.
But then they came back and they did the Indy Lights series. Yeah. So
you do wonder where it leaves you. It's sort of like, does Indy Lights eventually fade away and you end up just becoming shipping more guys from the US to Formula 3 and Formula 2?
I honestly don't see that happen. I think they might be okay, but it's not something that would be that severely concerning for the time being. But we'll see.
If you're looking as a sponsor to push a kid through a junior series and through a junior category with potentially the long-term aim being Indy Lights. Yeah, I'm sure Indy Lights is a lot cheaper than Formula 3 and Formula 2 in Europe and globally now for some of those races. But you just look at it and you think, where is your best opportunity? And if you fund a kid, it's going to cost you more, but you fund a kid going over to Europe to race in some of those series, heck, the kid may make it to Formula 1 and may get a test drive with the Formula 1 team. You could argue that, especially if you're a global company, a young driver test for an American kid who's come through the Formula 3 and Formula 2 ladder is probably going to get you more global exposure than winning the Indy Lights series.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the Indy Lights, that's been an on and off series for years that's gone through a couple of different ownership changes. It used to be the Robert Bosch Super V, and then they renamed it Mini Indy because they really didn't have a feeder series. Then it was the American Racing Series, which became Indy Lights, and then there was the Infinity Pro Series, which also became Indy Lights, and then there was the Toyota Atlantic Series.
Yep, the Star Mazda below it as well.
Yeah, Star Mazda and has become Formula Indy Pro, they call it now.
I think Indy Pro 2000.
Yeah, there's Indy Pro 2. There's Indy,
because there's Indy Pro 2000. There's USF 2000, and of course Indy Lights.
Right. Then there's also the US Formula 4 series, which is outside of that chain, but it produces good drivers as well. And then they all start with places like Lucas Oil Racing School and Skip Barber and SCCA. And which all leads back to karting, shifter karts, So, but yeah, Indy Lights has just not found its footing in the world. And when Mazda left as the primary sponsor of Road to Indy, it kind of hurt that series because all they've got left is Anderson Promotions promoting it. They've got Cooper Tires as a presenting sponsor, which is they're not paying nearly what Mazda was paying.
Look no further to one of the former Star Mazda scholars and Michael McDowell. To kind of pinpoint back to that story when I asked Michael how that thing helped them, it really saved his career because he would have been, had it not been for Mazda's budget with that scholarship, he would have been a Bon Bonner as driver coach. There would have been no Michael McDowell race car driver on the professional levels. There would have just been Michael McDowell school driver for those who are up and coming to have the budget.
Exactly. So again, while IndyCar does have a good ladder series, that ladder series needs a little help. And I don't know. Penske has committed to trying to see what he can do to help, but at the same time, it's not under the same ownership as IndyCar. It's owned by Anderson Promotions.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it's not under the, it's like NASCAR, trucks and Xfinity are under the same umbrella. They're under the same ownership, so they can really have some consistency there. The fact that, IndyCar is owned by, Penske Entertainment, and Anderson Promotions owns Indy Lights. So you're never going to have a true consistency through there. But at the same time, to your point, guys coming out of Formula 2, when there's no, path to Formula 1, or the path to Formula 1 is full, IndyCar is a great opportunity for these guys. And it reminds me of, back in the 90s, when you got guys coming out of what they used to call the 5,000 series, which morphed into Formula 2. You got great guys like Bruno Zanquera, Alex Zanardi, Juan Montoya.
Bourdais came from 3000 as well.
Yep. Bourdais, all those guys came into IndyCar from that route. So it's kind of like everything old is new again.
It's essentially, it's just a matter of who wins that F2 championship or where they stack up. The thing is that it's more than likely you're either going to be in Formula E, maybe IndyCar on a part-time basis, or go to WEC.
Go to WEC, go to IMSA, yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, so we probably need to stop talking about Formula 2 and talk about Formula 1 before we, utilize our whole spot of time. But there was a Formula 1 race in Italy. And the driver that won was part Italian, Australian Italian, and he's a fan favorite. Daniel Ricciardo won the race with his teammate right behind him. 1-2 for McLaren. The first McLaren win since 2012, and the first McLaren 1-2 since roughly around the same era. And there was a number of situations that led to that. But at the end of the day, McLaren was spot on in qualifying. They were spot on in the sprint race, and this is not a victory that fell into their lap. No. This is a victory that they earned. And we've talked about McLaren for the last year and a half on the show as being improving and steadily improving. And here they are, race winners and taking the top 2 steps to the podium. So Richard, let's talk about Monza.
Well, Monza was the return of the sprint race qualifying, second iteration of that after Silverstone. And so we had Friday practice session, Friday qualifying session, where Valtteri Bottas took pole ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Valtteri was very impressive in qualifying. You could argue that's because he had a new engine, which resulted in basically he was going to be starting from the back of the field no matter where he finished the sprint race on Saturday. And going into the sprint race on Saturday morning, Hamilton had a bad start. Valtteri and Max had good starts, and it all sort of shuffled out. With Valtteri winning, Max came second, I think, and Daniel Ricciardo was third. So going into the race itself on Sunday, you had Max on pole with Daniel second, and I think Lando was third, and Hamilton lined up fourth. And it was a little bit of a clumsy start by, not clumsy. Ricciardo got away well, took the lead on the first corner, and Monza, everybody thinks Monza will be this great circuit, it's not really. It's quite difficult to overtake that. And because you run so much low wing anyway, the DRS opens, but in terms of how much is opened as a ratio sort of concept, it's pretty slim advantage compared to most tracks. So really being in the DRS zone doesn't guarantee an overtake like it does at some track. So you had the situation where Ricciardo and Verstappen were sort of pulling away, and Lando was in there, and Lewis was sort of stuck behind him a little bit, had a couple of chances to get past, and I think at one point he did actually get past just before the round of pit stops. And going into the first stop there, Max had a very slow stop. I don't know what the underlying cause was, but a sort of 2.5 second stop turned into about 6 or 7 second stop. So he came back down the order, which again relieved the pressure on Daniel Ricciardo and allowed Lando Norris to sort of jump ahead there. As it all sort of bore out. And then Hamilton had his stop, and he came out. He had, again, about a 4 second stop, so a little bit slow. And as he emerged from the pits, he was just ahead of Verstappen on the cold tyres, going into turn one. Verstappen at a far faster rate of closing into the corner than Hamilton was, and Max got alongside, arguably going into the first right-hand corner, and as you went into the second left-hand corner to sort of cut back on the second part of the chicane there, Hamilton sort of squeezed Max onto the sort of sausage curves at the corner of the apex of turn two, and Verstappen could have backed out. He could have taken jink left early, missed the corner, which would have meant he had to yield the position to Hamilton even if he got ahead. But Max sort of, tried to hang it out there and tried to claim the apex into turn two. And the more Hamilton sort of squeezed him, the more Verstappen, avoided contact and hit these sausage curves on the apex of turn two, and that sort of launched him, back onto the track into Hamilton's path. The rear wheels touched, and sort of launched Verstappen over Hamilton's rollover hoop. Landed on that, and thankfully his rear right tire landed on on Hamilton's halo, which prevented. Certainly some, nasty injuries, I think, to Hamilton potentially. People would claim Hamilton's, it saved my life. I don't know about that, but it certainly prevented some potentially nasty injury there.
Well, I would say it's there. If you look at some of the photos there, with the tire on top of his head and his head is pressed down in the thing, without that halo there,
it potentially could have been a lot more.
Yeah, I was just saying that car is, that tire is right on his head.
Could have had another Brundle at Interlagos when, what was it, Verstappen? When Irvine took out Verstappen, and when Verstappen was stumbling, whacked Brundle's helmet while tumbling.
Oh yeah. We don't know, but it certainly didn't hurt Hamilton having that halo there. It certainly was beneficial to him.
Yeah.
And then there was this whole, Verstappen got out and didn't check that Hamilton was okay. Yeah. Hamilton was celebrating at Silverstone when Verstappen was in hospital and all this sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
It was all blown out.
Yeah, what comes around goes around, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, the whole of that was blown out.
Yeah, I didn't. You didn't check on me in the hospital, so I'm not going to check on you in your cockpit. Yep, there we go.
And at the end of the day,
in a moment, Verstappen was just angry at the fact that Hamilton is just.
Yeah, and these guys have enough peripheral awareness to know. I am almost certain that Verstappen knew Hamilton was okay. As I say, they have a lot of peripheral awareness. These guys, they know what's going on around them, and I'm pretty. The fact that Hamilton was spinning his rear tires in reverse, trying to get out of there, was pretty good sign that he was okay. But so as a result of all that, that basically led to a processional victory for the two McLarens. Lando cheekily asked the question if you could challenge Ricciardo for the win, and said, yeah, probably not a good idea. And they understand that, and I don't think anybody, and those two guys are team players. They know what it's all about.
No, exactly. We got this win in the bag. Let's not do anything to jeopardize it at this point, because we haven't won in a while. We haven't won in a while.
They basically pulled a Spa 98 with Jordan.
Yeah. And on the road, Checo finished third, but he had a 5-second penalty for an incident early in the race where he passed. I think it was one of the Ferraris. He passed him and then took a good 3/4 of the lap to give this place back when he knew he should have given it back straight away because he did cut the corner, did take an advantage. And of course, the team were like, "Oh well, we wanted to clarify the situation with the FAA." Well, that's crap. They know the rules. They know that they gained an advantage, and they should have just given it back there and then and just moved on. But they didn't because they thought they would. Whatever. That was a bit stupid by Red Bull to trying to sort of play that card, but whatever. So yeah, it all sort of was pretty plain sailing from McLaren, bar the pit stops. Ricciardo led from start to finish, and all very very sort of nonchalant. Hamilton saw a quick Hamilton said, Ricciardo winning makes the sport boring, or dominating or whatever it was, But it was a great race.
I'm sorry, whoa. Hamilton said Ricciardo dominated, makes the sport boring.
It was a tongue-in-cheek
comment, I think,
where people were people criticized Lewis for like dominating.
Yeah, for singing every lap. I get it. Okay, all right. Gotcha.
But on the flip side, looking back at the incident, there obviously was the main talking point between Max and Lewis. Verstappen has a 3-place penalty coming up at Sochi in a couple of weeks, which I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I think it was a racing incident far more than Silverstone was. Could Verstappen? I think both drivers are equally culpable. Both could have avoided it. Hamilton could have given Verstappen more room. Verstappen could have bailed out earlier. I struggle to see. It's to my mind, it's a racing incident. What it did show was, as I say, lack of awareness and lack of discipline on both drivers' parts. But then again, you're in a position here where we are. And we've talked about this on the show before. This is the Prost-Senna style battles of the late 80s. We haven't seen this, to my money. I know we've had Schumacher and Hill and Schumacher and Hakkinen and all these sort of things. But, and Hamilton and Rosberg to a certain extent. To my money, I don't think you've seen a battle as intense as this for 25 years in Formula One.
It's been a minute, yep.
If not longer, for 35 years almost. And we are incredibly lucky to be able to watch this and sit here and talk about it.
Exactly. But to your point about the penalty, so the 3-spot grid penalty is for the contact, is what you're telling me, right?
Yes, unavoidable contact. I think.
Okay.
Does that add
I think that's nonsense because the penalty was built in right there. Neither guy finished the race. There's your penalty, right? So I'm not a fan of penalizing the guy for the next race for something that happened in this race.
Does it add if somebody did super license Verstappen?
Potentially, yeah, but I think Verstappen's pretty clean on that. I haven't checked.
He has
the
zero.
lately.
I think he's one of 3 that had 0. The other, I think, being Ocon and Mick.
Yeah, I mean, that's nothing really in the grand scheme of things. I don't think that he's going to get close to.
I don't think he's
enough points.
No, he'll be fine for a good while.
Yeah, but I just think that you can't always say, Frank, that just because 2 drivers get taken out, there's no penalty there. I think there are instances where something is clearly a driver's fault, and both need and one needs penalising. But I don't think this was clear cut enough, personally, to call it either way. But these guys, what we're seeing is 2 guys at the top of their game who are not going to give an inch. And the problem is, as soon as one guy backs down and gives that inch, the other guy's got the mental advantage. So in reality, to a certain extent, both Verstappen and Hamilton would be happy with the outcome of that race. Yeah, neither of them wanted to crash out, and they'll probably both point fingers at each other, but they'll also be turning around and saying, well, I'm not backing down, I'm not giving in. And this is what's going to happen. You revisit this scenario and this situation at every race between now and the end of the season, and exactly the same thing will happen. Because the first guy that gives an inch and concedes points to his title rival, it's these guys, they are say on the limit. They are at their maximum ability. And we're talking like single-digit percentage levels of performance here. And if one shows weakness to the other, it's going to be a huge boost and a huge confidence blow to the other driver. So I think I think we'll see this again this year. I think we'll see a scenario again this year where Hamilton and Verstappen come together and both retire from a race. Because
I agree. I don't think we're done with this yet.
No, they are both.
I don't think we're done with this season. I think this goes into next season as well. Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing to consider. What happens if Hamilton gets beaten? Where is he mentally? Because he's only ever been beaten once, and that was by Rosberg. That was his teammate. And that took a toll on him personally. We know it.
And then Rosberg went and retired. Said, ha,
and Rosberg gave him the middle finger.
Yeah, he said, "You can't even. I won't even give you a
beat
chance."
Me again.
Yeah, exactly.
So
now Max isn't going to do that.
No,
Max is here to stay. Yeah. So
talking to sort of people that I know within the series and within the team at Mercedes. I, sort of mentioned it in passing to them, what was Lewis like after Rosberg retired? He was just devastated because from the second he got out of that car in Abu Dhabi, having lost the championship, Hamilton was like, right, I'm going to beat him. I'm going to beat him. I'm going to beat him. For the 2 or 3 days before Rosberg announced his retirement, that's all Hamilton was thinking. And then what did he have? He had nobody to beat, and the same with Max. If he loses to Max, where does that leave Hamilton going into next year? Because he knows he's on the back foot. And to a certain extent, and Hamilton's 36 now, 37. He's not going to find another gear. Hamilton can't go any higher than he is right now, I don't think. And he's openly said that. Hamilton has openly said Max has enabled him or forced him to go to another level. Go to and drive a car in ways that he never thought was possible. So if that changes, if Max beats him, then Hamilton's where's his next 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second he's going to need. I think it's going to really leave him in a difficult position.
It'll certainly make things interesting for the championship the next couple of years, depending how much longer Hamilton wants to keep doing this.
Well,
and then on top of that, you got to consider George in the mix. Who knows how he'll fare in his first year?
Yeah, and that's the other point. George coming in, if Hamilton's wounded going into next year by Max beating him, and the George comes in and he pushes him, Hamilton could be in a really difficult position, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. It really is. This is as I say, the next 7 or 8 races, or how many we've got left, could be like the defining period of Hamilton's career. This could be the moment where Hamilton eclipses Schumacher's championship total, gets that 100 race wins, really sets the bar above everybody else. Or it could be the point where he cedes that crown as a generational driver to Max. And if Hamilton doesn't win the championship this year, unless something, freakish happens with the regulations next year, Mercedes have the far faster car, which is possible, I can't see him beating Max again. I don't think Lewis has any more left in him to raise his game. And I think Max may do.
Wow, that's bold.
I firmly believe it. I think this
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, yeah.
We are looking basically, the next 2 months could define, Hamilton's legacy. I truly believe it. And Verstappen has it. Verstappen has the capability to basically, make or break Lewis Hamilton in many ways.
Oh, exactly. And Max is young and he's hungry, and Lewis is very comfortable where he's at. You know what I mean? He's, comes in, clocks in. Hey, fellas, how we doing? And you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that this, like you say, he really hasn't been challenged to this extent. To this extent. I mean, Rosberg, he lost to Rosberg, but he's really being challenged by a driver on another team who's younger than him. And, I don't want to say Max is better than him, but you know that thought is bouncing around in the back of Lewis's head. The same way when Senna came over to McLaren and joined Prost.
Yeah,
Prost who had 2 championships under his belt at the time, and so here's a guy who's younger than me, hungrier than me, fighting me at my game and doing well with it. So yeah, it's fun to watch right now. And Lewis, to your point, he's got plenty of money in the bank, right? He's got plenty of accomplishments. He can walk away from the sport tomorrow and still, be the leading guy in most of the stats forever. And yeah. So, and Max has nothing to lose.
No. I as I say, I think this is make or break right now, and I truly, I think it's going to be fascinating, coming into the next few races. I think we will be talking about this in 20 years' time, hopefully.
Certainly, yeah.
I really do think this is going to be this is going to be like 88.
Yeah.
One of the legendary seasons in Formula One.
Yeah. So we're off to Russia next.
Yeah, a couple of weeks' time. Yeah.
After all the funs and joys, we go to. It seems like every time we talk about wow, madness, fun, and then Russia comes along, it's like, well, we'll see what happens.
All right, so let's.
Last year was actually probably the best.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Yeah.
So in fairness,
go ahead.
No, I said so. In fairness, Richard has a point.
Let's think about it this way, right? So the British Grand Prix, the British driver won, right? The Dutch Grand Prix, the Dutch driver won. Italian Grand Prix, the Australian driver with Italian heritage won. So is this Mazepin's day when we get a Sochi? Or is that a stretch? Is that a stretch?
That's a stretch.
That's as much of a bigger stretch that the time that Gasly was qualifying one spot better that ended. The sprint race.
I kid. So, so we've got a week off before we get a Sochi. Yeah. But it occurred to me that we don't have a week off before the next IndyCar race, and we neglected to make IndyCar picks for Laguna Seca. So let's go ahead and get our IndyCar picks in. And then we'll have a few minutes left to talk about a NASCAR race that was held this past weekend. So, Richard, who do you like for Laguna Seca?
Laguna. Poor
Newgarden. Okay, Luis?
Yep.
I'm going. I think Rossi will get it done. I think the momentum is on a high note right now.
Okay, very good. Very good. I think that Palou goes back to back. And nails this championship down
to where he shows up at Long Beach, starts the motor, and that's it.
I don't know about that. He's still gonna have to run at Long Beach.
Yeah.
Why would you miss Long Beach? It's such a fantastic event. So, but yeah. So we've got about 7-8 minutes left. NASCAR, second race of the chase. Martin Truex Jr. comes home the winner, so he stamps his card for the chase. So, did you get a chance to watch the race?
Very lit. Only caught the very end of it because of the ARCA West race that lasted too long and it took longer to decide who actually won and so on and so forth. But Kurt Busch had problems where the wheel completely came off, smashed the wall. Bubba Wallace ran over the carcass of Kurt's flat tire, so on. I'm surprised there was no fines for it because if there's one loose lug nut that kind of lets the whole wheel go or tire or whatever, that's a suspension for a crew member. But Ross Chastain, first, before I talk about Ross Chastain, Joe Gibbs Racing 1, 2, 3, Hamlin with another great run. Christopher Bell had a much needed run to keep his chances into the postseason go beyond the first round. And yeah, Ross Chastain had a really good showing from what I saw. And Kyle Larson, well, one of my bold predictions is officially dead because Kyle Larson moves on to the next round, where I said at the very beginning
he's pushed
he would
through,
be out of the first
points.
round.
Yep. So yeah, we need to look at those guys at the bottom of the cut line, and I think it's I think McDowell is toast.
Michael McDowell, you have Alex Bowman
Bowman is fighting for his life, and he could theoretically.
William Byron is also in the bottom. So
Yep,
half
yep.
of the Hendrick drivers had to step it up no matter what. And they say because Kurt Busch is in via a tiebreaker because he had the highest finishing race at Darlington because, of course, Bowman had that tire problem a couple weeks ago. But
Yeah.
we'll
So,
see what happens at Bristol.
So we're off to Bristol, which is,
cutoff
it's a cutoff race. And, Bristol has lost the luster it used to have years ago, but it's still a neat little track. I still like it. Who do you like?
Some people claim that as one of it's the fourth crown jewel race. When I did that infamous tweet about
the Bristol night race, is used to be one of the hardest tickets to get in NASCAR years ago. But I mean, since they reprofile the track and whatnot, it's lost a little something over the years, but it's still one of the oldest and most unique tracks out there. But let's go ahead and pick a winner for Bristol, because I want to take a few minutes to talk about the NASCAR schedule for next year. So, Luis, who you like for Bristol?
I have Kurt Busch for this one. I think Kurt will keep the Ganassi momentum going. I know he's hit a couple hiccups along the way, especially last Saturday, but I think Kurt gets it done. And I'll mention something about Saturday real quick after this regarding 2022.
Okay. Now, Richard, you got a pick for Bristol?
Logano.
I was kind of thinking Logano myself, but since you picked Logano, I'm going to go with Kyle Busch, who's always good for winning Bristol. He brings the broom with him to that place sometimes. So, but with that being said, we've got just a few minutes left in the show. And so NASCAR released their schedule for next year, and the Clash, which has traditionally been held at Daytona, which is the race for the pole sitters from the previous year, and as well as
sometimes
or the former champions. I was gonna say,
the playoff drivers are all essentially in, so minimum speed. We have 16 drivers.
Actually, we had a lot of no qualifying lately, so I'm not even sure how they decide who's in the Clash this day and age. But it used to be anyone that won a pole the year before was in the Clash. But however they're doing it, they're moving it from Florida to California. They're taking it from Disney World to Disneyland, if you like that reference. And they're going to race on a quarter-mile track in the Los Angeles Coliseum, which is the Coliseum that was built for the 1980 Olympics. It was also home to the LA Raiders and the LA Rams on and off over the decades. But they're going to put a little pavement track in there. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. It's just from a itinerary concern, it's going to be concerning. But yeah, the home of the USC Trojans, which they look like they're going to be tanking this season because they just fired their damn head coach. And we're not talking about football though. But anyways, it's an interesting and bold move. I know fans have been clamoring of wanting short tracks. There's short tracks out, and a lot of people are complaining. My gripe is more or less kind of initially was you go from LA, then 2 weeks time you're going to go to Daytona, and then the week after you go back to California for Fontana, which is official. The Fontana race will be the second round of the year. There's just a lot of movement going on, but fortunately between the Clash and the 500 is the Super Bowl week, so they have the Super Bowl week off to make the move. I think it's going to be fun. In some ways, you can describe fun in many ways. I think it's going to be intriguing. Will it be a success? Time will ultimately tell.
To me, off the top of my head, it seems gimmicky. Honest to God, it does.
And I don't disagree with that at all.
Because we've traditionally had, speed weeks at Daytona that starts with bike week, and we have culminates with the 500. So now we're gonna fly out to Los Angeles to run a little tiny track with half the field there. No live pit stops.
Debut of the next gen car too.
And who wants to wreck their next gen car on that little track? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah,
but we'll see how it plays out.
As long as they do driver intros and that walk path down where they have the entryway where they have the Olympic logo and all of that. If they do driver intros there, it'll be all worth it. Because that's probably the best. If you want to go all gimmicky, you do driver intros in that fashion. Have them walk down the long stairs at the stadium.
Oh, I could certainly see them doing that. It's just like something straight out of like an Eddie Gossage playbook, or Humpty Wheeler playbook. Let's go ahead and just make it as gimmicky as we can. But other than the Clash moving to LA, no real surprises on the schedule, correct?
Gateway is making its cup debut.
Yes, Gateway. Yeah, but we
Pocono's dropped to one race. Richmond is both day races. There's only 3 Saturday races all season and 1 off week period. That being after Sonoma. Yeah, only 1 off week. 3 Saturday races, which is going to feel extremely weird for me because I honestly don't mind my Saturday races. It's like, okay, I can relax Sunday unless there's an Indycar race, which we'll see how many of them we're going to have on Sunday.
Yeah, so, I mean, with that being said, so we are out of time.
One final thing. Homestead is back in the playoffs.
Yes. Huh?
Homestead is back in the playoff calendar as the start of the round of 8 rather than the title deciding race. Phoenix is the finale again. But other than that, it's about the aforementioned changes I mentioned. That's about it, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for like, Kentucky to be back on there or something cool. But, yeah, so. Oh, well. Gateway has done a nice job with the IndyCar race the last couple of years. And kind of my fear is if they put that track compound down on Gateway,
they better not.
It'll wreck the track for IndyCar like they did with Texas. So I really hope they kind of keep in consideration that NASCAR is not the only people that utilize that racetrack. So, but anyway, we are at the end of our hour. So, Richard, I want to thank you. Louise, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. But most of all, I want to thank you folks that listen to us every week. But until next week, good night.
Hoobazoo.com